morning, Sunday schoolers. So in today's Bible story, we hear about Jesus calling. In Samuel, we hear God calling Samuel in the middle of the night. He thinks it's mentor Eli, but really God is calling a kid, somebody like you, to go and spread God's word. So we know that in Jesus' time, he was considered to be a rabbi, and rabbis were teachers. They're really highly esteemed, important, really knowledgeable religious teachers. And to be a follower or a disciple, you had to be like the best of the best of the best of the best students to be good enough to follow a rabbi. But we know that Jesus doesn't really work in typical ways. And Jesus went out and called fishermen. Fishermen were not good students. They dropped out of school relatively early, and they went and worked for their dads because that's the family business, and that's just what was expected of you. So the fact that Jesus is calling fishermen to be his first disciples is really rather amazing. Normally, society in Jesus' time would have said, "Stop! You can't come this far. You can't follow a rabbi. That's not for you. You are excluded from being a disciple. You do not enter. You're not good enough." We all know I like to use visual help. So how about I told you that I am going to walk through the stop sign? You would say, Liz, that's impossible. You can't physically walk through a piece of paper. Stop. You can't do it. So I'm going to fold this. Have you ever in your life been told that you can't do something, or you're not good enough to do something? Or maybe you have had some self-doubts about being able to do something. You know, I can't sing good enough. I'm not a good enough athlete. I see somebody being picked on, but I don't want to say anything because I don't want to be picked on too. But God might call you to be doing different things, but you might feel scared or under-equipped to be able to do those things. But remember, God called the disciples. God called Samuel, just a young boy. All these cuts that I'm making, they are representing all of those doubts, all of those barriers, all of those stop signs that we give ourselves and that society gives us, saying, "Stop, that thing is not meant for you." So we've got this stop sign, and we've got all these little cuts in there, all these different barriers that we give ourselves and society gives us of why we aren't good enough or can't do the thing that God is calling us to do. But God comes in and he opens up these barriers. Our confirmation kids, if you're listening today, you talked about with your mentor, the story of Jonah. And Jonah had every excuse in the book as to why he didn't want to accept God's call to go preach to the people of Nineveh. But eventually God made a way for Jonah to take the call, to go do God's work. So God takes those barriers and he creates a new way. Remember about walking through the stop sign? Here I go. I just did it. Where we place barriers, where society places barriers, God says no. God opens up his circle to accept everybody. All of us are good enough to be followers of God, to share about Jesus' love, to be loved by God, and to be receivers of God's grace. God widens the circle, and he wraps that grace around us and welcomes us in. God says, "You are called to be my disciple, and you are welcome here, and most importantly, I love you." Amen.